Shut up and sit down.
I am a radical libertarian.
And we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You deserve better.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
You just take an issue that's important to you and do something.
There you go.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
Because no one brings tear gas to a gunfight.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only
fight for liberty.
This is the cherry on top.
This is FSM.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fight for Liberty. We hit episode 200 last week, but we're not ones to rest on our laurels, and we're jumping right back into a hot one tonight. And we have a great guest coming on to pitch us on her up-and-coming organization. Be taking many questions from the live chat, so hop on in there, keep them coming throughout the show. But before we get to that, as always, we got to say a few thank yous to our sponsors. First up, Blood of Tyrants. I actually forgot to grab my can. Silly me. If you're looking for a nice night in, relaxing and enjoying taking down the tyrannical state and sipping on the blood and tears of your enemies, look no further than Blood of Tyrants Wine. They have a nice Merlot or Pinot Grigio, so you can sip on either the blood or the tears of tyrants right from the comfort of your own home, while knowing that you are supporting some great anarchist activists that are helping destroy the state. And if you use promo code FSM, you're going to get 10% off your first order. Go on over drinkbloodoftyrants.com. They've got both of those great wines, as well as this wonderful Liquid Freedom energy tea. It is 0 sugar, 0 calories, 100 milligrams of caffeine, and I have one almost every show, not just because they're a sponsor, but because it's great, and otherwise I get sleepy. So go on over, check them out, and of course I would really appreciate it. Our other sponsor for today, we've got a kind of a special sponsor, and I am super excited to talk to you guys about Wendy Higdon. She is running for state senate in Kentucky's vacant 37th district, and the race is shaping up to be a pretty good one. Wendy is a well-respected activist in the area. She's the founder of the Louisville Tea Party, and she's running on a solid platform of education reform and brings with her experience and professionalism. And the projected voter turnout is extremely low. We're talking a special election in the middle of December. It's December 16th. So terrible turnout usually. We're looking at like sub 2,000 voters in this election, most likely, giving us a good opportunity to actually break in and do some damage. We've got a higher than average libertarian registered voter in that district already, so turn them out, get some of the independents and Republicans together. This is going to be a fun race. So this is a super exciting opportunity for the LP, for Kentucky, and for you, for two reasons. One, this is a campaign that you can support and help out with, knowing that any money that you donate is going to be well spent on a well-oiled, data-driven, focused outreach campaign to reach voters that are actually likely to vote, and not just spent on willy-nilly crap over months and months of a typical campaign cycle. We only have a few weeks. We're going to spend this on mailers, yard signs, and social media advertising that is very specific to the voters that are actually possible to be turned over to vote for our candidate. And a fun little added bonus, if you donate in the next 90 minutes while we're doing this show, top donor, I did this last week, I'm going to do it again this week, top donor is going to get a free either Fight for Liberty or Free Speech Media t-shirt, whichever one you prefer. I'll reach out afterwards because I'll have your information. Haha. But go on over to wendy4ky.com/donate. Toss her some money. We could really use it. The mailers are not free, neither are yard signs, neither is anything in politics. So go on over, again, that is wendy4ky.com/donate, and check that out. Again, I'm super excited about this race. I think it's going to be an awesome opportunity for Kentucky to show off and show us how it's really done. But without further ado, again, we have a wonderful guest tonight. She is the first mover, the social media manager, she's editor, organizer, tyrant, and many other hats over at the LP Alliance. Ms. Amanda Griffiths, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here. Yeah, I don't manage all the social media accounts. I have to have plausible deniability on that. So sometimes I do some of the social media, but not when you're angry about it. That I never did any of those. So
there you go.
Yeah.
I respect that.
Absolutely.
So to start off, just give me like elevator pitch, 35 minutes. What is the LPA and why should someone like me join?
Sure. LPA stands for Libertarian Party Alliance, and we are an inter-caucus coalition. So we're rebuilding the Libertarian Party, revolutionizing the liberty movement. So inter-caucus means that we're not actually a caucus in our own right. And there are a few reasons for why that's the case, and that plays into our mission. First of all, we don't have elected leadership. We do have a 527 that manages our funds, and that 527, which is wholly separate from the org itself, does have elected leadership. But within LP Alliance proper, it's very spontaneous order. It's very anarchic, and people take on the projects that they want to. They find a place where they fit and can do really good work. So there's no elected leadership. The most that you have are like in the Discord, there are some moderators, that's it. We also don't have a platform. So we are looking at a very narrow set of objectives in terms of what we want to accomplish, first of all, in the Libertarian Party going into 2026, the Grand Rapids Revolution. But we also have a broader set of objectives that we're trying to accomplish outside of the Libertarian Party. So our mission extends outside of the LP. We're thinking about, the liberty movement as a vehicle for social change. You think the Libertarian Party as a wheel of that movement, and we in LP Alliance want to be the hub that connects the LNC and the LP to other liberty movement type of organizations and people. So because we are not actually a caucus, we're able to do certain things that caucuses and parties can't, right? We can connect, we can liaise outside of the party proper into other organizations and help engage in social action, advocacy, activism, all that good stuff. So we have immediate goals in terms of getting a good slate in at Grand Rapids, but we also have longer term goals, which is what we want to see in the movement in general.
Okay. Well, you gave me a good and easy segue into, are you pushing a slate in Grand Rapids? And if so, who's on it?
Currently, we're not pushing a slate. We have a few people in LP Alliance who are running. And right now, we, in my standpoint at least, and I think a lot of us feel that way, is that more voices for change, as long as we're aligned on the general kind of change that we want to see, more member empowerment and involvement, more voices are better. So we don't have a particular slate that we're backing for Grand Rapids at this point. That might change. We really haven't come to a decision on that. And even if we do have that slate, it's going to be up to the membership who they vote for.
Fair enough. Are you running?
I right now have been talked with about running by some people. That decision has not been finalized yet. I would say that there are a lot of good chair candidates that I've heard from. I would not want to step on their toes. There are a lot of great people in the chair race, so I certainly wouldn't be running for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting timing on the chair race and this episode, because I don't think I would have known about it if I wasn't talking to people about this and trying to get people's take on like questions to ask and whatnot.
Right.
Because if you had asked me yesterday, there aren't anybody running for chair officially.
Right. And then Rob Yates announced, who of course is a member of LPA, and he's fantastic. So again, not making any formal endorsements. Rob's a great guy, and I'm happy to see him in there.
Fair enough. Is there a spot that you would want to run for if you did run?
Honestly, my focus is on member empowerment and making the party more of a presence in American politics and advocacy for liberty in general. So I don't know if there's a specific role that I would want to fill that can accomplish that. I don't know if there is a role period inside the LNC that would do that. So I really want to be where I can do work for the members and for the movement in general. Disappointing answer, but I certainly want to be involved in the party. I don't know if a formal leadership position is the best route. It might be, but I don't know.
Fair enough. I've had similar conversations and thought processes.
Yeah.
I don't not running for anything in Grand Rapids unless it's very specific people ask me to. Which I don't think they will.
Right. And we do need such an overhaul in terms of the institution, right? And I'm one of those people who I don't think that structure predicts agency. But I do think that what you're able to do with that agency can be conditioned by structure. So we need the right structures in place in order to really augment the agency of the members and the work of the members. So there does need to be a lot of work done as it pertains to the organization of the LP itself. And again, you've got to have the right structure in place, no matter how good the leadership is. If the structure's not there, you can only do so much.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I, in the early days, was part of the Pragmatist Caucus.
Oh, you were? Okay.
The structure. I bought into what the Prag Caucus originally said they stood for, and kind of stuck with that. And they became very much not that towards the end. But they also were, like a non-caucus-y caucus. They were supposed to be non-ideological, not about, it's not about what you believe, it's about how you say it and the infrastructure behind it to allow you to say it better.
Right. I do think that's a good function for a caucus. I think, we have an ideology, right, as libertarians, and then a lot of the debates have to do with how do we get our messaging out there? How do we agitate for change? I am in the Radical Caucus, so for me, I like louder messaging. I like more forceful, bolder messaging. That doesn't mean that I have a different ideology to, say, the classical, well, I do have a different ideology to classical liberals, but the main disagreement, I think, is more on modality than actual principles.
It's interesting because I feel like the CLC definitely tries to pitch themselves as similar in the it's just about the infrastructure and about training, and also a similar at least stated goal to the original Prags, but I think they're a little bit more mask off about how much they are still ideologically driven.
Right. And I think that's good. We're an ideological party, so we need to be getting that out there. That is what differentiates us in many ways from both the Republicans and the Democrats. They're completely policy driven, whereas we are ideologically driven. I want us to be injecting ideology back into American political discourse. You can't get that with a major party because they're so coalition based and they're so, they're so indebted to these policy demanders that you can't get much said or stuck to in the way of actual ideology. Minor parties are where you find the ideology, so it's really important for us to have more of a presence in American politics, unless we just want politics to all be blood sport and all be policy wars.
I think blood sport is kind of fun.
Blood sport is fun. That's true. But not only blood sport, blood sport with a little bit of values underneath it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's we want it to be hockey, not UFC.
Yes, there we go. Were you part of our discussion during Molotov Cocktail Hour where we were talking about hockey? Because
I was the cause of that because I was watching.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
There we go. That's right. Yes. Yeah. For those who don't know, LP Alliance also has Molotov Cocktail Hour every Saturday, and people should show up. It's fun.
They should. It's usually a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I very much, obviously, I agree with the stated goal of getting the liberty movement more into the political discourse. I think that as far as the kind of like radical to pragmatic messaging slide goes, my personal opinion is that we just should leave that up to the candidates. And the party should kind of be neither.
So here's where I'm going to push back on that. It's because if the party just becomes about the candidate, obviously the candidate should be doing messaging and the candidate should be doing their own unique type of messaging. If the party only becomes about the candidate, though, and how the candidate is messaging, you get people like Trump. You get parties that are not ideological at all, because just what's happening is that the candidate is directing the tenor of what's happening in the party. It also minimizes, I think, member impact if members are not also part of setting that tone and part of doing their own evangelizing, for lack of a better word, for liberty. It's not that candidates don't matter, they absolutely do, but members play a key role in increasing the party's visibility to a point where people are going to care about the libertarian candidate, because libertarians have, for the past 4 years or whatever, been causing all of this ruckus. People are going to want to know more. So while the candidate should have their own messaging platform and method, it shouldn't just be left to the candidate to drive messaging every couple of years or every discrete election that you have.
I'll agree with most of that. I think that you can be the arbiter of principle without being the arbiter of messaging, which is kind of where I see the role of the party and the membership of the party, because there's a huge difference between I make a lot of illustrations of the liberty movement as if it's a church or a religion, because we act kind of culty anyway.
I mean, I think it works, yeah.
So you've got, at the top, you've got like your actual leadership, your pastors, your elders, and then you have your membership, like actual members of a church, which is different than the people who are there, even every week, or, Easter to Christmas, but then you've got your next set that's like your congregation, and then you have your people that are, there every once in a while, show up to the outreach stuff, like the people that are on their way in. And we have every level of that within the liberty movement. And as far as like who's messaging to that bottom rung of people that are like out there in the ether, gettable, convertible to the liberty movement, I think that the role of getting them in is the nonprofits and the candidates, not as much the party. The party's job is to be there for when they do come in, to either get them involved or get them like a group of people. And so within that illustration, I've always seen caucuses as kind of like Bible studies. It's like once you join the party, then you can pick whether or not you're a radical or a classical liberal or what Waffle House lover above all else, like every good Christian American should be. And you can kind of go from there towards the people that can help you become more rooted in that faith, for lack of a better word, the actual ideology, to learn more and grow as a libertarian, because you're not an anarchist when you join typically.
Some people are.
Some people are.
Yeah.
Very few people are, and they kind of have to get taught and be part of the community, where they start to question like, oh, maybe that thing I was raised on isn't wrong, and oh, maybe MK Ultra really is a real thing, and oh, did Operation Paperclip actually happen? And then they go down the rabbit hole, and then a couple of years later, now they're an anarchist.
So when you look at successful socio-political movements, right, there usually is some kind of movement organ that is helping to not necessarily do their main outreach with non-members, but that organ has a particular arm, say, that is working on bringing in non-members. And that's the work, I do agree with you, of the candidate, but it's also the work of a member who, say, is like somebody's classmate or somebody's neighbor. You're always able to do that work, and I think sometimes in a much better and closer way than some random candidate that you don't even know is running, because we don't have funding to help a candidate run. So I think it's also the fact that a lot of nonprofits can't market a cause as libertarian, right? They can maybe do some small libertarian stuff, but they can't go out and say we're libertarians and we're doing this libertarian thing. What part of the role of our party is to market causes and candidates as libertarian, and to say this is a libertarian cause, this is a libertarian candidate, obviously. So I don't think that we focus exclusively on getting more people in, but that does need to be a function of the party, because we need more members. We need to awaken current members. We need to do some of that outreach and draw people in. And I think we've talked before about how I am big on activism as a mechanism of getting people in and involved and getting them to have stake in a particular party or cause.
Mm-hmm. Activism is good. I think my biggest issue with the party doing activism is that there's just easier ways to do it outside of the party.
As it is now, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. For instance, I wouldn't want the national committee just swooping in to a random state and being like, okay, you're going to fight for this now. Like, screw you. I want to fight for data centers, or against data centers, as the case may be. So yeah. The work of activism, tyranny trickles down, but liberty flows up, right? So that's got to be a grassroots thing. But the party needs to be able to provide the resources in some way to help facilitate that. The way that I envision the LNC is, without infringing on the autonomy of the members or of state chapters, are able to help connect members and chapters to causes without necessarily saying you have to do this. Or conversely, if there's something that happens, say, I think it was Pennsylvania, where in Chester County, they eliminated recently all of the minor party voters from the rolls and said that they couldn't, people weren't allowed to vote. Yeah, that should have been a huge thing, right? That should have been something that every minor party could have jumped on and coalitioned on, because it was a blatant example of an attempt to disenfranchise people just because they weren't part of either major party. And I think we dropped the ball on that because the state party didn't do much in response to it. The national party kind of just let the state party do its own thing. There wasn't enough communication. As a result, a critical messaging opportunity was lost. That's the kind of time when I want to see, first of all, I would have loved to have seen the state party really step up. Then the national party can come in and say, okay, what do you need from us? We can promote this press release. We can do this on a more national scale. We can send this out to other people, that kind of thing. So there should be a dialogue. It shouldn't just be someone coming in and saying, my favorite cause is this, and now all of the state chapters have to work on it.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I think if there is, we have to have the infrastructure in place to actually make that flow of information happen. And I think whether it's, local and state parties or other organizations, because again, in my perfect world, in that example, it makes a lot of sense for it to be the party specifically, because it's like very party specific. But in a lot of these cases, I would rather see like a 10th Amendment Center or You Are the Power or Gun Rights of America or something like that at the helm of the issue at least, and then us kind of coming behind it as the party itself, if anything. But there needs, like you're saying, there needs to be that dialogue. There needs to be that kind of incestuous relationship that the other two parties have with their nonprofits, where every member of the NRA voted Republican for 25 years straight. Like, it's not quite as cut and dry now as it used to be, but like every member for many years. Yes. And similarly, every person that's ever held a sign that says Fight for 15 voted Democrat.
Right.
But they're their own organizations, kind of doing their own thing. And it really, my biggest reason for being as adamant on start the conversation from outside of the party and even away from the candidate specifically is because when you approach somebody as, like you said, we're against data centers, you're approaching your community as somebody that's against data centers. Every single person that's also against data centers is instantly on your side. And now the more that they learn about you, they might become less and less and less on your side, or more and more so, but they're already on your side. If you meet that same person without having done that and say, hey, I'm running for office, Now you are instantly not on their side,
Right.
and you have to say some things, even if you're from their party.
Yes.
Like, even if you are a Republican, you still have to be, well, okay, but there's, it's the primaries, there's a couple of options, like, why would I vote for you? Where if you're the guy that was against data centers, that's already on their side, and then you go, hey, remember me, I'm running for office, it's a completely different conversation that very few libertarians get to have. And you see it sometimes with like Will Henry in Indiana was like on the normal board for a while and then ran for office, and you kind of got to see a little bit of that. But it's very rare that we actually are able to pick the activists up and put them into a position where they're running for office in a way that's actually transferable, and we can get the people that got fired up on that single issue actually into the party.
So I think this is where you're completely right in terms of you don't go up to somebody and you don't say, I'm a libertarian, I'm against data centers, right? This is kind of the approach that we take in LP Alliance. And I call it radical maximalism. Basically, the idea is that you do meet people on an issue that is materially salient, germane to them, that has a felt impact, there's a felt pain point. I can give you an example of how someone in LP Alliance did this. Phil Ryan, he's an amazing person. He's in Pennsylvania. He was working, or he found a group of people in a township that had this noise ordinance, and they were using it basically to go after one family in particular that was helping people who were in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction do motocross. And like they were teaching kids how to ride bikes and stuff, and it was a cool, fun thing, and it was a way for people to stay sober and all of that. This noise ordinance was insane. It was the sort of thing where you could not run your lawnmower. And so rather than going up and saying, we're libertarians and we're here to help, it was more, we think this is terrible. We want to help you fight this noise ordinance and fight the person who's implementing it. And so, there was, Phil helped set up some street canvassing where people would go and, get signatures and have a decibel meter and say, well, this conversation is actually against the ordinance right now. This conversation that we're having right now is illegal, which was huge. And that happened technically, with an organization that claims the mantle of libertarianism very strongly. We didn't go in and say, we're a bunch of libertarians, we want you to be a libertarian, and we're going to help you. It was, this is an issue that is important to you, it's an issue that's important to us, and the guy is like full-blown libertarian now. We didn't do that necessarily from outside the party. We were very much libertarian when we did it, but that's not how we led. We led on, let's get you involved in something that matters to you, let's help you have a voice.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I just had Spike on the show last week, kind of talking about a very similar thing with You Are the Power, and one of the reasons why I lead with that over the party when I'm bringing people in is because, examples of things like that are so much easier to message to people on than policy or principle or platform or any of that other crap.
I do think that there's a time and a place for, so I'm a huge dork, right? I'm a recovering academic. And so there's a time and a place to go around and actually do forums on ideology and on the literature and on the history of libertarianism. But that's different, right? Like that's a contained event. And usually what happens is by getting people involved in activism, then they might get more curious about what libertarianism actually is. My guess is that someone's first exposure to libertarianism probably isn't going to be a forum about, the history of libertarian and anarchist thought, unless they're a student or something. It's going to be, being on the ground, being involved in something, because again, when you give your time to something, you're more likely, it's just like money, you're more likely to see it want to succeed, or rather to want to see it succeed. So that's really the way to get people active and part of a movement, help them feel like they matter, help them feel like they can realize their uniqueness within that movement. That's the active piece. Again, I do think there's the part for ideology, but you don't just go up and start quoting, whomever, whether it's Proudhon or Ayn Rand. You don't start with that. You don't lead with that.
Yeah, and again, like back to the church analogy is just that you do need the Bible studies and the Sunday schools and the teaching people more intricate stuff. You just don't go out and try to do that on the street. Like
Right.
there's the street corner pastors are different from your Sunday school teachers.
Yeah.
And no church would ever ask somebody to try to do both.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like different people, right? Like some people are really good at being the street corner pastors, and they're probably not great for having the kids color things in Sunday school. So it's different people find a role within this party and within this movement. Part of what we do in LPA is we want people to be able to create those roles. But yeah, there is something for everyone, but sometimes you have to build it.
Yeah. So what makes LPA different than the Pride Caucus or the Mises Caucus or the other caucuses other than just legal distinction?
Yeah, so as I started out with, and it is funny because like we're able to canvass at all these events where caucuses aren't allowed because we are recognized as a non-caucus, so it's very fun. First of all, there is the lack of actual leadership, right? It's sort of order out of chaos. It's a little bit fuzzy, but things get done. There's also, again, I think one of the biggest things is that we are looking at doing work outside of just the Libertarian Party. We want to be, again, that hub that's connecting different spokes of the Liberty movement to the Libertarian Party, hopefully a more robust, more formidable Libertarian Party after various institutional and bylaw changes that's going to allow that to happen more effectively. But we want to be that connective tissue. A caucus, again, has a particular way of messaging, has a particular set of issues that they're focusing on. We don't have that so much, although I think a lot of people are up for radical, bold messaging. Not everyone, though. We are more about, okay, what are we actually doing to help get the liberty movement more, help revive the liberty movement, right? And revolutionize the liberty movement, make it more forceful. That takes place outside the party as well as within the party. So I'd say it's the fact that we're not looking at having a platform or necessarily even a coherent slate. And we're more focused on some changes in Grand Rapids with regard to the bylaws, yes, but in order to reach out to the liberty movement writ large. And we've already done some of that, and it's been really cool.
What bylaw changes?
There are a few, and again, I want to preface this by saying that we're all different in LPA. Not everyone in LP Alliance is for all of these, so that's your disclaimer. We want to, in the first place, be able to reward states that maybe have more stringent ballot access requirements, or maybe just have smaller populations, don't have much of a membership share. We want to be able to reward them if they're doing a lot of great work when it comes to advocacy, whether that's a campaign event, whether that's a protest or demonstration. So we want part of the delegate calculation award to also take that into consideration. Okay, how much have you done outside of just holding meetings that really brings liberty more to the forefront in your area? Have you collaborated with other states, that sort of thing? We're also, and this is a controversial one, but we are also looking at changing the structure of the LNC so that rather than having these gerrymandered regions, rather than having at-large reps, which are really basically elected by a very small number of people who are able to afford to get to the national convention, we would like to have most of debate, right, occur via an internet forum so that it doesn't cloud up meeting time. Most of debate and all of that occur via threads, via email threads, and then have one officer from every state be a representative on the LNC. And meetings are mostly just for voting. So that way you don't have a bunch of people trying to abuse Roberts. You don't have meetings that last for 5 hours. But what you do have is you have the membership having more of a voice through that. We're also talking about referendum style voting in some cases where members can vote directly on certain things such as resolutions. These are all in the mix. These are all things that we're workshopping within the group. And it's really fun to see folks fight it out and talk about other things that they'd like to see. But those are a couple of our big ones.
Sounds a lot like Ken Molman's bylaws amendment.
It is with this, like this one change, which is that nobody is using your money to hire somebody else to make decisions for the party, right? So the Molman plan, I really like it, but the Molman plan has that built in, right? So you've got that larger body, but then a lot of the work is outsourced to another appointed board. We don't want to do that. We want to put power in the members' hands more. One thing that we've realized is that you have actually a lot of great leadership in some of the states and some of the state parties because people can get things done there. What we want to be able to do is take that level of leadership and that level of commitment to the national level without sacrificing what's going on within the state. So basically scaling successes that are happening without, again, compromising the autonomy of the state itself. So by giving each state a voice on the LNC, you have a more direct line, and the LNC isn't so hierarchical yet siloed, which is creating a lot of the issues in not getting things done, the issues in communications, the issues in gamesmanship that we're seeing right now. There's more of, again, a thread and a through line that connects the individual member to the state and to the national party or the national committee.
How do you make like day-to-day decisions on a 50-person board, though?
So a lot of that would go on with via email and things like that. So we have the public list now, which is not fantastic. That would also need to be updated to something like Mailman, which is a much more intuitive way of doing online communications, forum style thing where everyone can see. They don't necessarily subscribe to a Google list. The day-to-day decisions, in a lot of cases, you could do it a couple of different ways. You could have the elected members, right, serve on smaller committees. And I do think that committees have an important role to play here if their role is clearly defined. So you have elected membership, and then also, I don't want to say rank and file, but non-officer members, so people who aren't necessarily on the LNC, also serving on those committees, working to make some of the decisions, if it has to do with activism, if it has to do with candidates or member support, that kind of thing. There's some day-to-day decisions that can very clearly be made by still elected individuals, but in smaller numbers in committees.
Fair enough. I think that like the smaller board was one of the selling points of Ken's proposal for me personally. Was getting to actually let the people who run the company run the company. Just treating it more like a company is honestly something that I appreciated about his proposal, and making the LNC basically just a board of advisors or a board of directors. And then you have your C-suite of your actual people doing the job.
Right. And I think in some respects, of course, we are a company, we're literally an organization, right? We are a business, but we have a different function as well, right? Like we're not just trying to make a profit. We have a social and political change function. And we are also a group of people who have all, again, elected to be here and deserve, I think, to have a voice in what goes on. So rather than, I'm paying dues, I'm paying someone money to decide what's going to happen with that money, with those big decisions. I wouldn't want that to be made by a board of directors. I would want that to be made by people that I voted for, ideally myself, if we're talking about referendum style voting. We actually have the tech now to begin to introduce, in some cases, direct democracy on the LNC. Although, once again, you would need to have a seasoning requirement for that. You would need to have secure balloting, that type of thing. We're getting to that point. We're getting to the point where we need to be bringing those questions and those decisions more to the members rather than outsourcing them and pushing them away. To me, that doesn't feel very libertarian. I believe in it being the individual's decision, the individual's choice.
Fair enough. Is the important thing of kind of siloing that off is coupling it with like making it mostly useless in a typical like minarchist fashion of returning most of the decision making and the important stuff back to the states and the local parties, and then what's left over that just like has to be done is then done by just like a paid staff that actually has an incentive to be there and do it well.
which
And then-
by this model, sorry, go on.
Just saying, then kind of cut out that middleman aspect of just like unpaid people that spend 25 hours a week just sifting through emails.
Right. And by this model, you would have those decisions being made by the states, right? If you had a state officer if you had one state officer for every state on the LNC. So that would be going back to the states, but you'd be scaling the effort. So instead of an effort and leadership staying completely local and not being able to make use of that on the national level, you actually would be able to make use of that on the national level without sacrificing local autonomy.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Any other bylaw changes?
There are some. The others, we are still kind of in the middle of workshopping. Those are the two big ones, I think, and those are the two that are likely to be the most controversial. There are a few people, and I haven't been a huge part of these discussions. There's a debate happening right now as to whether there should be membership expulsion, and there are a lot of, as you can imagine, very strong opinions on either side of that, whether people should be able to expel members. There is a provision that we are introducing as well, or trying to introduce, for member-based recall. So if there is an officer that's behaving very badly, delineating what thresholds the voting membership, people who last voted at convention, say, are able to remove and recall those officers. So that's been a fun one, because I think that's something that a lot of people have wanted to see over the past few years.
Yeah, that one I think would be good. Speaking of expulsion and recall and fun drama stuff, how do you feel about trademark lawsuits?
Trademark lawsuits. Is this your crafty way of asking me how I feel about intellectual property, or just the LP trademark lawsuits?
Crafty way of asking how you feel about the LP stuff.
Okay. The LP stuff in general. So I do think that we need to have brand consistency and brand integrity. I think that that's been abused. The idea that, okay, well, I get to decide how this brand is going to be used without taking a look at, what was actually in the bylaws, whether something should have gone forward or not, whether we're talking about Michigan or anything else. And I'm close with some of the people who were involved in Michigan, and it was a shit show. So with regard to that, I think honestly that I don't support the decision that was made. Let's just put it that way. I'm glad Michigan is working to get back on its feet now. But as for trademark lawsuits within the LP, again, there is a brand, right? And if someone is using that brand to promote things that are contrary to our principles, that's one thing. I think in that case, the situation was abused and the idea of trademark was abused for a given purpose.
Fair enough. It was interesting watching a bunch of people who were on one side of that issue in Michigan very quickly flip-flop when the conversation started coming up about was it New Mexico, right?
Yes, New Mexico.
Okay, yeah.
So that's another thing. I mean, in that one, it's weird, right? Because the New Mexico Libertarian Party actually preceded LP National. So if you just look at the, what's on the books, LP New Mexico, or New Mexico LP, does have technically more of a claim to that. Where it gets messy is, of course, okay, well, are you claiming part of the Liberal Party now, or actually are you claiming to be part of the Libertarian Party? And I do think there's a path forward for reconciliation in that arena based on conversations that I've had with people, but that's a tough one as well. Again, I'm hopeful, I'm going to say, that can be resolved in a less messy fashion.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, it would be nice, but yeah.
It'd be nice for it to be not a messy one. We've already done like Michigan and Massachusetts and Oregon and
still stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I got a front row seat to the Massachusetts stuff. I wasn't a part of it, but I got to watch all of it from both sides. It was very fun.
Yeah. Sure.
I've always had the issue of I wish more people would, or more parties would just self-disaffiliate. That's
yeah, and that's a tough one. So, are we speaking in code again? Are we speaking about LPNH, or are we?
I mean that is one, yeah, that I very strongly feel should disaffiliate. Not that it should be disaffiliated.
Right.
I don't think that. What I think should happen is that they voluntarily leave.
That'd be nice, but here's the problem with that is LPNH has no reason to voluntarily leave. So, and this is where brand integrity comes in, because LPNH has a really good grip going. They've got the label of Libertarian Party on them. A bunch of folks who have previously been, I don't know if they still are, leadership in LPNH have said, we don't actually care about LP National, we care about free state stuff, we care about growing New Hampshire libertarians. And so they're able to use that brand to bring people in who are outcasts, generally speaking, in the political spectrum, who are extremely conservative, in a lot of cases are statist atomists, and I've done writing on how that happens. We don't have to get into it, but they're bringing people in who are otherwise just wayward political orphans and telling them, you're welcome here, calling that libertarian, where I think you and I might agree that a lot of the things that they're promoting as libertarian aren't necessarily. Some of them are, some of them are not. And they seem to be preferring sassy rhetoric over actually principled discussions and sacrificing actual principles, and instead using edgelord type rhetoric. So that's one where it's difficult because they don't have any reason to voluntarily disaffiliate. I think it'd be less messy if they did, but I don't see them ever wanting to do that because they have brand recognition.
I feel like the Free State Project in and of itself and the party apparatus that exists has more brand recognition than the party itself, I think, does. Like, a lot of the arguments that they themselves would make, I think, are the arguments for disaffiliation, which is that they are objectively, like, more successful than the party at large is. They have more elected members in New Hampshire than the other 49 states combined, regardless of what party they're in. Like, they are dues-paying members of the party that are elected to office.
Right, and that's a critical thing. Like, a lot of them are not libertarians. New Hampshire also, incidentally, has gotten bluer since the rise of the Free State Project, but I don't know if those two data points are correlated, or rather, causative. Yeah, they do have elected members, but what are the actual politics of the elected members? So I think you're correct that they're successful at something. I don't know if they're successful at being a libertarian party.
No, I don't think that they are at all. They're a caucus of the Republican Party, and would just, I don't know, I feel like it would just save everyone a lot of headache if they just kind of admitted that. And I've made that case to them and their leadership multiple times. As a friend of, I don't know the current chair very well. But the last three I would consider good friends of mine before that, and continue to consider most of them my friends. And so, like, I don't think, it doesn't seem worth it to me, is my thing with LP New Hampshire and a few of the other states that have gone through similar eras of just like, well, we don't like what National's doing.
Yeah.
Okay,
we've all been
then
there.
don't be part of
definitely
National.
all been there. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's either don't be part of National or work to fix something, right? So yeah, on the one hand, I think there's been a lot of people, myself included, that have not been happy with what's gone on with National over the past several years. And then you just have to make a decision, which is, are you going to stay in and fight? Are you going to take your ball and go home? I think we're seeing with LP Alliance that people are stronger when they band together and fight, but that takes a lot. Overcoming that sense of learned helplessness and being alone really does take a lot. So I empathize with that.
Yeah. Would you guys consider yourself a Mises exclusionary organization?
No, we've got people in our leadership, like on the spending committee who are Mises, and within LPA proper. We also have like our mods. We have them who are either former Mises or are currently Mises, but sort of deviated from Mises leadership proper. We're not exclusive to Mises. I think Rob Yates is technically, or was until very recently, a member of the Mises caucus. He's awesome. So no, what we have a problem with is we have a problem with any group that just tells their members to fall in line and also wants to sell the party out to another party. I think if you want to do that, then as you said, go be a caucus for the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. That's what the issue is. So a lot of the problem has to do with particular individuals in Mises leadership, not members of the Mises caucus themselves, who might just, be fans of the ideology, might have been initially enticed by the promise of being of super radical messaging, right? So no, we're not Mises exclusionary, although it is something that people occasionally like saying about us.
Yeah, I definitely I haven't gotten that vibe from anything that I've seen officially from you guys, but definitely from all of the membership that I know.
We have, well, me, like we have members certainly who do not like people in the Mises caucus, right? And they can say what they want, but my first really close friend in the LP is still a member of the Mises caucus and is actually pretty well known in the Mises caucus. So this is not the kind of thing that I'm even interested in trying to exclude folks who were in that caucus. Because again, you've got people who really know how to market success. That was one thing that Mises did really well, right? Is they were very good at broadcasting their successes. There's a lot that we can learn, both from the successes and failures of folks in the Mises caucus. And I always really like any time someone who is Mises or former Mises wants to help us out.
Well, that's good. I definitely think one of the biggest problems with most of the groups that have come to power in the party is that they were formed as an opposition movement.
Yeah.
Like the Mises caucus was an opposition movement to the Prags were an opposition movement to the Radicals were an opposition movement to the previous Prags.
Right.
Who were an opposition movement to the Harry Brown style radicals, and it's just perpetuated this cycle of there's an infiltrating movement that then takes over, and then you can't do anything as an opposition movement after you win.
That's the entire thing. And I've studied social and political movements for a really long time, and that's a place where a lot of them fall apart. I know, I'm a huge nerd. I am completely. I've written so much about this, but this is a place where they fall apart a lot. There's this huge opposition block, and I went into LPA very cognizant of this, that there's a huge opposition block that forms, and all that they do is they oppose the people who are currently in charge, and then once the opposition block actually takes over, things either fall apart or get significantly worse, and they become the only thing that they know, which is what they opposed. And this is the problem with having any kind of negative premise for an ideology or a group. But we can talk about the non-aggression principle later. So, so this was something that in LPA we don't want to have happen to us, which is why we very quickly, really within the first couple of weeks of forming, said, okay, what are we actually trying to get? What are we actually trying to do for this party? And came together on that, so that it's not just what we're pushing against. It's not about taking the party back at all. A lot of times we'll say we're taking the party forward and actually looking towards something bigger.
I like that. That's one thing I think late Mises caucus, 21 into 22, got fairly good at was when they toned down the takeover rhetoric from a lot of people. And one thing Dave Smith said quite a bit was, it's not a takeover, we're just calling in the reinforcements. And that was, I think, one of his better lines by far. And I watched them recruit 95% of my friend circle actively over a 3-year span, most of which are people that if you asked a typical anti-Mises person about it, they would say it would be impossible that the Mises Caucus ever actually was able to recruit or message well to gay 22-year-old Bernie bro
Yeah.
trans, you know, like
Right.
melding a couple people together, obviously.
Right.
But you know, but they were, and I think that was another big struggle of their opposition, was just blatantly mischaracterizing who the Mises Caucus was and why that they were being successful. And it's like, oh, they're just a bunch of Nazis, and they're getting a bunch of Nazis to join, and then you go to their event.
We know about that in LPA because we get called communists all the time, so it's fantastic.
Yeah. It was so much fun, like, listening to, you know, because at the same time, I was like, my two best friends in the world were Brianna Coyle and Reed Coverdale. Like, it was very, very much. So I'd have one side of my friends telling me that it's like, it's a bunch of toxic male, you know, misogynistic, racist, blah, 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 blah. And then I would walk out of that room full of white men that were saying all of that and into a Mises Caucus event where it's like 60-40 male to female, bunch of color in the mix. Everybody's having a great time. Most people are under the age of like 45, like young, attractive, like with families, like just healthy, normal people. And I'm like, none of these people look like they live in their mom's basement.
Right.
Which is what I'm being told. Yeah, there definitely were. Can't lie too much. But it was just so much drastically different than what everyone was being told. And I think that was a huge asset to them, because it only took one interaction to be like, oh, every criticism of them is bullshit.
Right.
And we're just going to dive in, which I think, you know, to your point, the detractors from LPA are dangerous of doing the same thing for you guys, where just like any interaction of being right of center and having a positive interaction with you guys, and you go, oh, okay.
Most of us are fine. Yeah, no, we're not going to kill you until later. Like, the gulags are so far into the future, you don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
You got to wait till they can take out a life insurance policy on it.
Exactly. So long into the future. But this is interesting, right? So my experience with the Mises Caucus and kind of watching them do their thing was, I kind of was critical of, yes, what some of the policies they were pushing. I ultimately was critical of the Kingmaker strategy, but that was much later. I was also kind of critical of the way that they were going about trying to retain members. And so maybe this is something that you can enlighten me on. My perception was that it ended up being, in many cases, just show up to the convention or show up to a meeting, and you don't really need to do much participating in learning about the ideology, which was something that we heard from certain elements of leadership, maybe not all of them. And when you say something like that, you're also committing another flaw that a lot of initially successful social movements do, which is that you don't allow the membership to be evangelists for the movement. So you end up having people who don't really know the messaging that they're supposed to be transmitting kind of stop caring after a little while. And then you have folks at the very top who are essentially herding cats, and it starts to fall apart, and they end up having to re-recruit different people over and over again. I saw that at least with certain facets of the caucus. I don't know if that's a fair characterization of the majority of it. But that was part of my criticism, was that I saw a lack of member empowerment beyond, show up here, do this, vote that way.
From my perspective, I think I would agree with a good chunk of that. I don't think that there were the thing that they did well was not actually burn them out in that process. And so you had people that showed up to state convention 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
And that was just about all that they did. But they did it 3 years in a row. Took a weekend of their life, paid for a hotel and gas and the whole nine. Got the babysitter, brought the wife, did the whole thing. But I honestly, I see, in a way, I see that as a huge benefit of the Mises Caucus, and something they did really well, was have that like passive membership be something that's possible. We're never going to be a successful movement if we don't allow for the people that just, you know, donate $200 a year total across a few different campaigns, show up and vote, and maybe they come to their state convention once a year. Not even that.
Right.
Like, the other two parties rely on 99% of their membership being those types of people. The people like you and me are the weird people.
Well, of course. Anyone who shows up to a party convention is insane, right? Like, you see DNC, RNC, whatever, are nuts. They're all nuts. They're wearing costumes. It's crazy. So that's true. And I think part of the reason that Republicans and Democrats rely on that more is because, again, they're not ideological. So why would they want people who are more ideologues showing up and you know, actually paying attention? Then the ideologues would get angry because the party is not ideological. But I think you're correct in general. I would like for that proportion of our membership to be smaller and smaller, not by force, but just by, hey, there are all these cool things that you can get involved in and care about. Here's an opportunity to do it. But yes, there's always going to need to be a spot for people who can only commit so much time, and then, you know, can easily dip in and out. Again, I'd like that to be less people, but we need to have that for sure.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that we should be constantly pulling people out of that sliver, but that sliver needs to grow like a lot, because at the moment it's like 2% of the party, right. And we need it to be more than half. Like, if we want to actually be winning elections of any kind, we need people with lives, because like you mentioned earlier that like some of the evangelists have to be the people, you know, with like a classmate or a coworker or whatever. That requires them to have classmates and coworkers and lives,
that's true.
and a social circle to evangelize into. I don't know about you. My non-libertarian social circles suck.
Well, yeah, no, but people with classmates don't have lives. I'm going to tell you right now. Like, I just escaped university. We don't have lives. But no, that's true. I think in general we're in an age of increased radicalism. We need to lean into that, but that doesn't mean that we need to abandon, you know, all other social spheres. We need to be infiltrating them, for lack of a better word, right? So yes, you should be, you know, talking to your coworkers. You should be meeting people where they are, because with totalitarianism, as significant as it is, there is always some kind of encroachment happening anywhere that you are. So there's always something to fight, essentially.
Yeah. Definitely agree. And I think that the best evangelists always are, you know, your neighbors and your friends and whatnot. Those are the people that can make you think about things a little bit differently. It's rare that you're just going to see a YouTube video and be like, that's me. I mean, it does happen.
Exception. Yeah.
But that's kind of how I joined. You know, I saw basically a single video of Gary Johnson.
Okay.
And was like, that's my guy.
Okay, yeah.
But it was because I was already basically here ideologically and on the important issues, and you know, I was like, you got guns and drugs in the same candidate. That's all I needed to hear.
There we
that
go.
was never going to get that in the other two parties. So.
Yeah, it does happen. And candidates, again, are really good evangelists, but I don't think that they're the only ones. And if they're only there during campaign season, so we need to be making use of the people who are, you know, constant soldiers. So.
It's another big thing that I think we have a problem with. That while we're just on this monologue of terrible things about how we do the party, candidates need to be doing shit before they run for office.
Yeah. This is a big one.
You can always tell who's running for something, or who's even on the short list for possibly running for something, if you pay attention. Like, it is clear and obvious that both Gavin Newsom and AOC are possibly looking at presidential races. You just know that from what they're doing. And I couldn't tell you a single libertarian that's running for president in 28.
Right. Yeah, I think,
or
you know,
governor in 26.
Tossed around, but yeah, there needs to be we need name rec, and the candidates also should have name rec. And with that, we can get, the one can help the other, right? But yeah, there needs, the Libertarian Party in general, the members need to be doing things, need to be saying, again, this is part of what's important about what we're doing. This is libertarian. This is a libertarian cause. We are libertarians here fighting for this. And then people learn what libertarianism is, what it looks like, and are able to identify in the election season who the libertarian candidate is, and are interested in who the libertarian candidate is. Because right now, nobody has a reason to care who the libertarian is who's running. We need to give them a reason to care in the off season, and that comes back to the membership, and a lot of that is the party's role.
And just the pre-planning of it. You need to know that you're running 2 years before you run.
Yeah.
Which we're bad at.
Yes.
And then I actually got asked at an LP happy hour a couple weeks ago. Somebody was asking my opinion on, they want to run in 26. And they, did the math on like how many doors they'd have to knock, and basically, did the math out that like, if I start running now, I can knock enough doors to win my like state house race or whatever. If I'm just like knocking doors 5 hours a day every day for the next year and a half.
Right.
And I'm just like, no, don't do that. Like, start thinking about yourself as a candidate now, but don't start portraying yourself as one. Figure out ways to talk to all of those people under the guise of a different issue or reason. Start something. I told him, I was like, literally just pick a food bank and then do that exact same door knocking list that you were going to do, and do it as a canned food drive, not as a candidate. Just go get food from their house.
Yeah.
And then go back to everyone who answered the door so that they'll actually remember you once you're a candidate, and be like, hey, remember me? Now I'm running for office. But don't fucking knock on their door a year and a half before election and say, hey, I'm going to run for office. Will you vote for me in a year and a half?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a great thing too, is, you do the food drive, and then again, people have given something, so they are invested in your success. It's a weird psychological thing that a lot of people know, but yeah, you make people do something, and then they want they want the success of the person who made them do it. It's a very strange thing.
Yeah. I don't know how the party can necessarily, like, obviously not enforce, but foment better forethought for things like this. But it would be like, we should know all 50 of our governor candidates.
Oh yes, yeah. And I think a lot of that also comes down to training candidates. We need to do a better job in general of the support that we give to people who are running and people who are agitating for whatever cause. There should be more of a set of resources, a toolkit for people who are going to run. Part of that should involve training. It says, hey, you need to be doing this, that. I mean, what you said was more insightful about running for office than I've heard from many libertarians recently. So just that alone, right, is very helpful and can go a long way. We need to be doing that as a party. Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, mirroring the off years with the even years in a way that, again, with that forethought. So rather than, this year in 25, pretend that the election hadn't already happened, rather than picking like winnable elections for our city council races around the state, pick winnable cities for your gubernatorial candidate for next year.
Yeah. And I'm going to make people angry. So I'm not saying don't run for certain seats. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that people don't know who their local comptroller is. People don't care who their local comptroller is. If you're running for an uncontested office or an office that nobody knows about, that's fantastic, but it's not actually going to get the visibility that anyone is talking about it getting, because nobody knows who holds those offices anyhow. They don't know what those offices do. So it's not don't run for them, but you're correct, I think, that we need to be looking at offices and races that can get us higher political capital, and understanding that victory in a campaign doesn't just mean getting the most votes. For the Libertarian Party especially, there are propaganda victories. There are messaging victories. These are all huge and often contribute to more lasting victories than simply winning a seat.
Yeah. Yeah, it requires basically like a 3-year drawn out plan that anybody in the party would have to be able to have some semblance of control over anything for those 3 years, where you have a year where a person is establishing name recognition in their local area, and then a year where they're running for local office in that local area with the assistance of some statewide bigger name, like a Larry Sharp or a Gary Rain or a Donald Rainwater, or like somebody like that, speaking at all of these city council race events and stuff like that, helping out with their fundraisers, doing all of this, getting in front of every single voter that those city council races are getting in front of. And then the next year, it's flip-flopped, and Gary's doing all of those events while the local candidates are showing up as the opening act and bringing back out all of the people that fell in love with them 2 years prior because they were running a dog shelter or a food bank or a park cleanup operation or something like that. And that would be a winning strategy if anybody could do 3 years worth of consistent anything.
And maybe this is part of it. Maybe we should have officers hold longer terms in the LP. Maybe there would be a more consistent strategy for a longer period. Not forever. I know that might be a contentious proposal, but maybe if you had an LNC that had a 4-year term, then you might be able to, or at least officers that had a 4-year term, you might be able to get more out of it. Yeah,
I'm in complete agreement that we should not re-elect the LNC at the same time as we pick a slate for national office. It's insane. It should be 4-year terms on the opposite cycles.
Well, you get different folks who show up to those conventions too. I mean, there are folks who just want to pick the presidential candidate, and that's all that they show up for, and that becomes a disaster in its own right. So I think longer terms for officers, at least, is something to consider.
On the topic of conventions, to get back to some slightly contentious questions, I don't know too much context on this one, so I'm just going to ask a super open-ended.
I think I know what you're about to ask, so I'm excited.
What happened in Hawaii?
I knew you were going to ask this. Okay. So what happened in Hawaii? Well, clearly we organized an island invasion funded by George Soros and, tried to kill Austin Martin. No, he's going to take that seriously. What happened in Hawaii was that we do talk to a few people who are in the Mises Caucus and who let us know certain things about what's going on. I'm not going to call them like informants or moles or whatever, but we had information from someone that we talked to on several occasions that the Mises Caucus was planning to exploit this hole in, I don't even know if it's necessarily a hole, but exploit the fact that the Hawaii bylaws allowed for out-of-state people to show up, and they were going to, flood en masse and try and make sure that Austin still got elected. And there were also bylaw questions as well. There was a new set of bylaws that we were told they would also be voting on. So what we decided to do, and this was not until fairly soon before convention, we decided to get people to go and essentially counter mainlander votes. So what that meant was, if Mises puts up 5 hands, then we're going to have people put up 5 hands. Now that's a hard thing to engineer, especially at the last minute. But the intention was basically not to go, and there were a couple people who did want to go and oust Austin Martin, but the intention was to go and counter mainlander votes. What ended up happening was we got into the room, and the Zoom room, and credentialing took about 3 hours. Finally, everyone was seated, and we actually had a floor strategy to counter the attendance of the virtual delegates, because we were thinking, okay, well, if everyone shows up in person, then what we can do is we can just say, okay, the virtual delegates, all these people who are from the mainland don't count, and have everyone go home. We saw that there were enough people who were actually Hawaiians and who were there from LP Hawaii proper, virtually, that would not have been a prudent thing to do. I believe it was Andrew Chatterton who raised that objection himself. And then it turned into a whole back and forth. I'm not sure if you saw it, but there was an appeal of the ruling of the chair. And at that point, I and a few other people talked and said we should stand down on the vote because this is not going to go well for us, the vote on the appeal of the ruling of the chair. A few people from LPA left right away. And then there are a few people, myself included, who didn't vote on the ruling of the chair. So what you got was a vote that didn't count anyhow from the virtual delegates because Austin Martin said he wasn't going to count it, which prompted some of our folks not to even vote. In the end, by those numbers based on who had left and who was not voting, we had a slight edge. That's a point of contention as well. But it is something that I thought was important when I noticed at the time because it basically showed we tried to play by Mises' rules and did in fact win, although we would have preferred not to have done that. So the short version is we got information and we acted on that information, intending to counter the Mises votes. Again, because that happened so quickly and the communication was so haphazard, there were definitely some people who were there thinking, okay, I'm going to oust Austin Martin. And said that publicly, which caused a little bit of trepidation for us.
Fair enough. I don't know, definitely sounds like an anti-Mises caucus.
Well, the fact was that there were people, if we had learned that the Prags were doing it, we wouldn't have wanted the Prags to do it. If we learned that the radicals were doing it, we wouldn't want the radicals to do it. It's when there are folks who should be enfranchised, you don't want people coming in and taking that away.
That's valid. Yeah, there's kind of the issue that there really is only one caucus worth fighting at the moment. Like, regardless of your opinion. No offense to the radicals, but they don't exactly pose a threat.
Well, if you think that we're a caucus, then maybe we're worth fighting. I don't know. I'll have to let some people know that we're a caucus and see what happens.
What are some of your the tangible goals of things that you'd like to see the LNC and the party be doing within the next couple of years? If you get your way in Grand Rapids.
Sure. Well, I'd like to see them focusing on member empowerment. I'll get more specific. Member empowerment, movement cohesion, and international solidarity. And what I mean by that, for member empowerment, I would like to see more activism at the local and national levels from members. I would like to see members who are driven to do these things. So one thing that I'd like us to be working on are single issue coalitions, especially with minor parties, on issues that have to do with, let's say, immigration, that have to do with the drug war, that have to do with surveillance, all these huge things that are coming up. I'd like to see people working on those. I'd also like to see, in general, an LNC and leadership that are going to go and talk to people. So doing campus events, doing Q&As, doing forums. I want to see that because a lot of times the last chance you have to get someone ideologically is in university. And as someone who's been a grad student and taught, a lot of the students that I had were in DSA, but would tell me that they didn't like DSA. It was just their only option against the other two parties. And they thought DSA was a little bit too authoritarian. I'm like, okay, well, we're working on it in the Libertarian Party. I'd like us to do that. I want to see that. And that's also what I mean when it comes to movement cohesion in a broader way. So single issue coalitions, I want to see us working with, via some method, sources outside the LP proper in order to push policy and push socio-political change. International solidarity, LP Alliance, some of us in LP Alliance were actually just part of the reconstitution of the International Alliance of Libertarian Parties, which is now reformed in the US. It's a huge thing, it's really cool. So in the coming years, the LP needs to be working with that International Alliance of Libertarian Parties, talking about fellowship abroad with our libertarian counterparts, whether those are actually parties or whether those are people being persecuted in states where there can't be libertarian parties right now. we need to be doing more for that level of visibility as well. So more collaboration abroad. If I could wave a magic wand.
I like that part. It's one of those things that, like, you know, if national is to exist, which you know, I it's an if, like it is for the government. Like, if the federal government is to exist,
Sure.
one of its only jobs should be communicating with the other federal governments.
Yeah,
Like, that's about it. That's the only thing I really want it to exist for. I'm personally of the mind that the Libertarian Party would function better if the one and only thing that the National Party did was run a presidential candidate, and then it fucked off for the other 3.5 years.
See, I don't think we get enough visibility. I don't think we'd be able to scale it, but that's another debate for another time. It's like, you know,
if the state parties were doing their jobs, it would be fine.
Yeah. But again, I think national can help. I just, you know, that's part of the structural change that we need.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should say they fucked off as far as doing their own things, and you know, could still exist as like a support system, but they don't really need, because you end up with the same issue that you do with like Congress, where when you've got people on a board in a room to make decisions but don't really have anything to do, it always ends up with a problem. So having the board existent and meeting as much as it does, I think, is one of the problems with the party, that there's just too much time for our like full-time officers to get into bickering matches and arguments and email threads and stuff like that just really shouldn't even exist.
So I think the board meetings are pretty terrible and deal with terrible things and are weaponizations of Robert's, and I hate Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm a secretary in my current state party, so like I shouldn't say that it's anathema, but I hate Robert's Rules of Order. I want to get rid of it. But no, I think that's a fair point, because the meetings right now aren't for anything good, right? Something else that we have to realize, though, is that like our attention economy is nationalized. We care about national issues, not exclusively, but especially for people who don't pay attention to politics, generally speaking, they do know what's going on nationally. I think national has a role to play there in terms of doing messaging on a national level. But again, bringing state parties and their leadership and members up to that level to be part of that messaging, rather than saying, you know, we're in charge of this, you do your own thing, and I don't care what you do, except for when we're mad at you, and then we'll disaffiliate you.
Yeah, for sure. Which is one of the, like, again, I think that we need, like, those single issue organizations at the national level to carry a good amount of that messaging brunt. But I do agree that having that support system up there is helpful. The way it works right now is just not.
The way it works right now is that it doesn't. I mean, right. That's the bottom line. Yeah, and I'll say that.
Will you be in Dallas for the meeting coming up in a few weeks?
I won't, because I'm traveling for work, unfortunately. But I wanted to go. I will probably be in Georgia in January for that convention. If people are going to come there, they should and hang out. But yeah, unfortunately, I will not be in Dallas.
Gotcha. Well, for people watching that don't even know what I'm talking about, there's going to be an awesome fundraiser dinner in Dallas on, I think, the 6th or the 7th.
I think it was the 6th, because
that's Saturday. Mary Ruart's speaking, Mike Surtick, Jesse Coward's going to be the MC. It's going to be a good time. Y'all should come through. I'll be there with a camera. Go buy tickets. It's gonna be fun. I've never done an LNC meeting in person, and I will be in the room for the meeting also.
Oh wow!
So because I'll be behind the camera for that as well. So I have to be silent, but I'll be there.
That should be fun. Apparently, the in-person meetings are not as crazy as the online meetings, because you have to actually deal with people, and you can't be a terrible person to them. That's what I've heard.
Shocker.
I've heard they're less bad, but I don't know. Anything could happen.
Yeah, I know. I watched the stream of the one that was in Grand Rapids in person a few months back, and that was interesting, but definitely more tame than normal. Austin was being Austin, but at least he didn't have a ukulele out playing the entire time.
That's true. Yeah, he did for some of it, though. We had some mood music. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that was a fun one. Well, before we wrap up, tell people how to find you, the Alliance, and how to get involved, how to, carry the banner.
Absolutely. So you can find me at Ajax the Griff on X. We are also at LP_allies on X. You can also go to discord.gg/LP-alliance. And that's how you find us on the Discord. We have our movement journal, which is getting back up and running because we migrated it to another server. It's called The Torch. It is our multimedia movement journal where you also find some of our video content. That's at thetorch.media. Please submit to it as well because I'm the editor of The Torch. And usually I'm not a terrible person when I edit people's articles. So do submit those to me. And I would look forward to publishing them. We also have a GoFundMe, which like an irresponsible person, I don't have a QR code for it right now. But you should be able to find that on our website, which is lpalliance.com. I think I got everything. So.
Hell yeah. Well, Amanda, thanks so much for coming on. This was fun.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. This is a lot of fun.
Folks, thank you for showing up and watching. As always, make sure that you're liking, doing the subscribe thing. Again, I cannot stress this enough. Go to wendy4ky.com/donate and go help out that campaign. Super excited about it. And then come on back next week. We'll have a fun show for you again. Until then, keep up the fight. Stopping.
It always takes a long time.